Okay, since we're talking about adjectives in Chinese, it's necessary to mention the comparatives and superlatives, like English. Comparative sentence is in the form of insert the object of comparison, preceded by be before the predicate. Like in the example, 我比他高. If no object of comparison, the adjective can be marked as a comparative by a preceding adverb, 比较 or 较 or 更. They all means more. For example, 我比较高, 我较高, 我更高. They mean similarly without the object to compare. For superlatives, the normal way is to use the adverb 最, means the most, like English preceding adjective. 我最高 most. Okay, what about a copula? As we mentioned, sometimes it is not necessary to use the copula if you want to link the noun and the adjective in Chinese. But in sometimes you use 是 as equivalent of English to be of any other forms. Am, is, are, was, were, they are all 是. No formal change. Pretty simple, right? And normally only used when its complement is a noun or noun phrase. For example, 我是一名老师, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. 我是一名老师. If you want to say I'm tall, you would say 我高 or 我很高, not 我是高. Okay. So predicate, adjective, and the locative preposition 在 function as a verb themselves in Chinese. So in a sentence where the predicate is an adjective or locative phrase, 是 is not required. 我很高, as I mentioned. 我在家. Okay, I'm at home. I'm here is not necessary. 我在家. What about a tense? The tense of Chinese is different from English. Also pretty simple or sometimes ambiguous. Because Chinese does not have grammatical marker of tense. The time can be indicated by expression of time. You just simply say yesterday, now, or next year. 昨天, 现在, 明年. That shows the time. There's no further necessary for you to make any change of the verbs. Or may simply be inferred from the context. That's enough. There's no tense marker in Chinese. Aspect, there's something of aspects. In Chinese, is a feature of grammar that gives information about a temporal flow of events to show which event happened before or after which. There are at least two aspect markers that are especially commonly used with the past event in Chinese. The perfective aspect, 了, and the experiential aspect, 过. Both immediately follow the verbs. For example, 我看了这本书. That means I finished reading this book. 我看过这本书. That means I have ever read this book. Okay, since we mentioned 了, please compare these two examples. 吃过饭了. 吃过饭了. Here, 了 is used as a sentence final particle to stop or to finish the whole sentence, to mark the end of the whole sentence. 吃过饭了 means those things happened already. But modal particle or perfective particle, 了, only marked the time of the verb. For example, 吃了饭, 吃了饭. So in this example of 吃了饭了, that means the first 了 here is a modal particle of the verb 吃, and the second le here is the mark of the sentence final particle of the whole sentence. They function differently. You need to distinguish them. And the perfective le sometimes considered to be a past tense marker. So we mentioned that there's opinion refuse the tense of Chinese, but some scholars believe that it shows the past tense. Besides aspect also shows the tense. Although can also be used with the future events, which is different from English usage. For example, if you want to show something in the past, a perfective tense is not supposed to be used in the future. But in Chinese, it is acceptable, given appropriate context. For example, 明天我要吃了那个蛋糕。明天我要吃了那个蛋糕。Le here shows the perfection of the action eat, but it would happen in the future. It can also be acceptable. And for imperfective aspect, something happened, still, there are two markers. One is 在 or 正在, another is 这. 在 or 正在precede a word, usually used for ongoing action or dynamic events. And 这 follows the verb, used mostly for static situation, stable, unchanged situation. For example, 我在挂画, I'm doing the action to hang the picture. 我正在挂画。墙上挂着一幅画。这 here, 挂着 means it is placed, hung there, and never changed. You can put them together to use. 我正打电话。我正打着电话。Okay, I'm now doing something in a stable process. Okay, besides, we still have a delimitative aspect in Chinese, 限定体. The typical way is to use the duplication, is to denote an action that goes on only for some time and expressed by duplication of a monosyllabic verb. For example, 走走. 我到公园走走 means you do it, work for a while, to some extent. There's a limitation of that action. Or with the insert of 一, you can also say 我在公园走一走, to work a little bit. Or duplication by 看, like in 走走看, to test, to try. And we already mentioned adjective reduplication. Here we go to the verb reduplication. Since we mentioned the usage of determinative aspect, 走走看. Other verb reduplications include reduplication of a disyllabic verb into 4-syllable verbs. They must be compound verbs. For example, 讨论, you make it into an ABAB version. A 讨论讨论, 研究研究, 商量商量 means tries to do something. In compound verb-object combination, a delimitative aspect can be marked by reduplicating to 跳跳舞, 画画. Oh, this is something interesting. 画画. Still remember last time we mentioned in the phrase 画画, the first 画 is a verb, and the last 画 is here, is a noun, marked by a retroflex suffix of 画画, 画画. And also here in this example, the first 画 can be reduplicated to show attempts to do something. 画画画, 跳跳舞, 画画画. Okay, and if you reduplicated a verb, again, the second syllable would be unstressed syllable in pronunciation. Okay, let's talk about bay, a very interesting expression of a passive. Is it a voice? Indicate a passive voice? This is my question. You can consider. There's no definite answer for that. That means there are debates on this topic. So anyway, it's a passive marker, bay, followed by the agent. That means the bay followed by the person or the subject or someone who take the action. And bay may appear alone if you don't know or if you don't mention the agent. Or the agent can be inferred according to context. For example, 我被交警罚了. I was fired by the police. Or I was fired. 我被罚了. Don't need to mention 交警. 我被罚了. And other markers include 给 or 叫 or 让. The usage or the meaning of them are sometimes ambiguous. For example, 我给人打了. Look at this example. 我给人打了. What's the meaning of 我给人打了? It can mean I beat someone else or I was beaten by someone else. Both acceptable. Okay, let's then talk about auxiliary verbs. 助动词. A main verb may be preceded by an auxiliary verb. For example, 能 or 能够, 会, 可以, 敢, 应该, 必须, 肯 or 愿意. They may mean different but used similarly. They may be used without a main verb sometimes. For example, 你可以完成吗? This is a question. You can omit the main verb 完成. You simply ask 你可以吗? Okay, and let's talk about verbal complements. It is sometimes used double verbs in Chinese. Means the active verbs of a sentence may be suffixed with a second verb, including result of the first action or the direction in which it took the subject. For example, 听懂了. 听 and 懂, they are all verbs here, but the verb 懂 here shows the result of 听. For the complement of a result, means a verb suffix which indicate the possible outline of the action. 听懂, as I mentioned before. And sometimes we can add an infix. Infix means an affix used between inside a word. Okay, an infix 得 or 不 is placed between the double verbs to indicate possibility or ability. For example, 听懂, we have mentioned 听懂 are two verbs, double verb, right? Double verbs. And 听懂, 懂 shows the result, but you can add 得 or 不 here inside. 听得懂 or 听不懂 shows different results. And for complement of direction, indicates the direction of an action involving movement. Typical usage includes 来 or 去, or 上去, 下来, 过去, 过来, different versions, variants of them. 来 or 去 indicate moving away from toward the speaker. And they may form compound with other verbs that further specify the direction. 上来 or 下去 may then be added to another verb, and sometimes can be used as a directional suffix, used metaphorically. For example, 醒过来. 过来 literally means to come here, but here 醒过来 is used metaphorically. It's not really of the movement of a direction, but to awake. just like to come back to this word from another word. Okay, for the causative and pivotal construction, 间语句 means the object of one verb also served as the subject of the following verb. Typical examples include 给让教使请令 used as the first verb. Usually means to tell you, to ask somebody to do something. For example, 我通知大家来开会. I inform all the people come here for meeting. I inform others. And it is the others that should come here to meet. 他要我请他喝啤酒. He asked me to invite him, to treat him. It is me to treat him. 他要我请. And 大家 here served as the object of the first structure and the subject of the following structure. They are overlapping into one complex. And for double objects, some verbs can take both indirect object, usually refers to a person, and a direct object, usually refers to a thing. Indirect normally precedes direct. For example, 我给了她6本书. I gave her 6 books. 我给了她. 她 here is the indirect object, person. 6本书, 书 here is the direct object, thing. This is very like the structure of English. In the case of accusative marker, shows the object. Chinese sentence use 把 or 将. An action that results in a charge of state in an object. 把 here can be used to form a bar phrase. Bar phrase no longer occupy the normal direct object position, but move in front of the verb. You can compare the original expression 我打坏了盘子 and the bar phrase 我把盘子打坏了. What's the difference between them? 我打坏了盘子. 盘子 here appears finally. 我把盘子打坏了. Here, 盘子 was put in front of the verb. That is the emphasis of the 盘子 here. That means if you translate them into English, you can be aware of the difference. 我打坏了盘子 literally means I broke a plate. 我把盘子打坏了 means I broke the plate, because you emphasize that this plate. 我把盘子打坏了 means 我把这个盘子打坏了. That places more emphasis on what happened to the object, indicate definiteness, the place rather than a plate. Okay, let's talk about adverbs and adverbial phrases. They normally come before the verb, after the subject in Chinese. For example, 经济快速发展. In English, you should say the economy developed rapidly. You put a word ahead and with the adverb, but adverb here in Chinese was put ahead. 经济快速发展. In sentence with auxiliary words, the adverbs usually precede the auxiliary verbs as well as the main verb. For example, 他很可能忘了今天的事. 可能 is an auxiliary verb, and 忘 is the verb, main verb. 他很可能. You're not able to say 他可能很. No, 他很可能. Sometimes some adverbs of time and attitude may be moved to the start of the whole sentence or whole clause. For example, 每天我们都坚持学习，或许他今天遇到了麻烦。Okay, sometimes such adverbs put into head of the whole sentence, but some adverbs might never be put ahead. For example, 常常、经常 you can only say 我经常如何如何 you're not able to say 常常我如何如何 it sounds strange. Or 都就又 always follow the subject. Okay, for stative complements, the adverbial stative complements follow verbs. The most frequent example is 得. Okay, 得 followed by an adjective, turning the adjective into the adverb. This is a major function. For example, 他打球打得好，他打得好。打 here is a verb, 好 is an adjective. 打得好 here means an adverb. 得好 adverb. The verb may be repeated in a serious verb construction, means several verbs put together. And aspect markers can then appear only on the second instance of the verb. For example, 他打球打了好几年 you can only say in this way. 他打球打了好几年。打好几年 is the stative complement. You can only add 了 here. You cannot say 他打球了打好几年 No, 打球打了好几年。Okay, what is serious verb constructions? In Chinese, we say 联动, a series of verbs put together. And it is not acceptable in English, but in Chinese, you can use the original form of each verb and put them together, linked into a whole sentence. It is sometimes called verb stacking, means two or more verbs or verb phrases are concentrated together. Look at this example. 我背着书包冲出门骑上车走了 Four verbs were put into strings and followed one after another to compose for a whole sentence. Frequently, it involves either a verbal complement after the main verb or a coverb phrase before the main verb. So, what is a coverb? A coverb in Chinese, 副动词, is a class of words resemble both verbs and prepositions. It is often considered to be lexically verbs. That means the original meaning of those words are verbs. They may be gradually evolve into prepositions in the process of a change. When it appears in a sentence together with a main verb phrase, the result is the serious verb construction. That means coverbs can be used as a part of a verb construction. The coverb phrase, being adverbial, precedes the main verbs in most cases. That means if you sometimes find more than one verb phrase linked together, it is more often the earlier ones is the coverb phrase. For example, 我帮你找他 I'll help you to look for him. 我帮你找他 Compare it with 我帮你 I'll help you. Okay, 我帮你找他 The major information here is 找他 Look for him. So 帮你 here is used as a coverb phrase. 我在家做作业 Compare it with 我在家 I'm at home. 我在家做作业 I I do homework at home. 在家 here used similar to a prepositional phrase. It's a coverb phrase. Preposition is only one category of adposition. So adposition is composed of a preposition and postposition. In Chinese, we say 前置词 or 后置词. In English, there's only preposition. So sometimes we translate preposition into 介词. But actually, 介词 include preposition and postposition. In Chinese, there are two categories. Preposition includes 在, 从, 到, and so on. And postposition includes 上, 下, 里, 外, 内, and so on. There are expressions of location. I'll give you some examples of the locative phrases or the prepositions. For example, prepositions sometimes can be regarded as coverbs in Chinese, as I mentioned, and some of them form fixed compound together with aspect markers. Because aspect markers traditionally are used following a verb, and some of the coverbs are originated from the verb. For example, 跟 is a verb, means follow. 跟着 okay, 跟着 means with. There must be a grammaticalization happened of such cases. And as a 沿着, 沿 means to edge or along, 沿着, 按着, 按着. Sometimes we say 按照. 按照 actually is the variant of 按着, following or according to. 为了, 这 and 了 here are suffix following verbs. But in such phrases, they were evolved into coverbs and finally became a preposition. 为了, 按照, 沿着. They are prepositions, but they are the results of historical grammaticalization. And for postpositions, also can be called locative particles and location markers, used as the sentence final particle to end or to express the mood of the whole sentence, the whole situation. Well, finally, let's talk about sentence final particles. They're modal particles using weak syllables spoken with neutral tongue, expressing different grammatical moods. Examples include ma, ne, ba, a, o, le. Also, you can combine two syllables together. Le a become la, le o become lo. And again, you need to distinguish the sentence final particle le from the verb suffix le. Look at examples. 我没钱了, 我当兵了. Here in these two examples, le is used as the sentence final particles because it expressed the mood of the whole sentence, finished the whole sentence. While in the example, 我看了3场球赛, le here used as the verb suffix to express the finishing statement of a watch, of 看. Now, let me ask you a question to compare 妈妈来了, 妈妈吃了饭, and 妈妈吃过饭了. What's the function of le in those examples? Okay, here is the end of this chapter. I'm looking forward to meeting you next time. Thank you.